Still vibing to the music, my bad. Good afternoon, Graduate Tacoma partners. Y'all still out there? Make some noise if y'all still out there. I'm alone in my office, so I can and cannot hear you, but man, what a day. Incredible sessions. Vast majority, by the way, being presented to you by folks from our community. So round of applause. I'm getting it to myself in my own office, but round of applause to everybody who put on an incredible session for us all. Our speakers were amazing. Shout out to Nikita Oliver. What a start. Fire start to the day. Could not have been blessed with a stronger start. So thank you again to Nikita Oliver for starting our day off right. And as the day went on, we hope you had as many valuable takeaways as I did. I know I'm sitting in my notes, in my thoughts, and grateful and blessed to be with you all today. My name is Elvin Buku, and I am the Deputy Director for the Foundation for Tacoma Students. And it's my honor to close out this day with our last plenary session and panel. So before I do, cheers to y'all. Thanks for sticking with us through a wonderful day. A little background before I introduce. Our foundation's work within the Graduate Tacoma movement is centered always around our partners. Just as we're doing today, we've been connecting and convening with hundreds of community partners since our movement began more than 10 years ago. And I'd add another 10 years in the year of 2020. So maybe it's like 20 years because of COVID. But each of our partners have a unique skill set, scopes of work, and different programs in service to youth. And more in recent years, a common theme of many of our community partners and the collaborative networks that we work within has been this concept of systems change. So much out there about systems change. Different information. What is a systems change lens or systems change thinking? But here with the foundation, the Graduate Tacoma movement, we consistently try to ask ourselves, what does true systems change look like to us? How do we transform the way that we work together in service to a more equitable Tacoma? Again, in service to our youth and families, especially our youth of color, those impacted by poverty. We know no single organization can truly change the system. It's not us with the foundation, not Tacoma Public Schools alone, not any single community-based organization, big or small. So honestly, what does it look like here in Tacoma, here in the Pierce County, in our region, in our community? That concept is at the root of our Community Learning Fund cohort. It's to deepen our learning around what systems change could look like and should look like here in our community, especially through the lens of racial equity. We recognize there are many levers at play in order to change systems. And a main one, and I'm biased being from the youth development space, is the need for flexible, unrestricted funding and investment in our partners, the ones who are doing the work every single day, to build capacity to even have the time to convene together and build this collective understanding. So to close out this first day, I have the honor of introducing a panel of community partners who participated in our year-long cohort, again, in that year of 2020, that 10-year period of 2020, along with 35 other peer organizations, as we help build their capacity and capability individually and as a group in service of learning together, thinking about systems change, thinking about racial equity. And as you'll hear, these partners also did some really incredible work within their own organizations along the way. So without further ado, please welcome our amazing panel, Melody Rodriguez, Denice Randle, and Ashley Mocorro Powell, moderated by our very own Foundation's Ben Mitchell. Enjoy.
So I'm very confident that we all share the conviction that the Graduate Tacoma movement has to be a movement that is owned by the community, and true community ownership, it comes from relationships and trust and people feeling an authentic sense of belonging to the movement. And this was also something we talked about in our cohort, is building belonging and how changing society isn't possible if we don't see ourselves as belonging to it. And I'll be fully transparent and say that for FFTS, like, we have work to do in this area. I'm sure you three would say the same for yourselves and your organizations. We're not perfect. So I don't mean to put you on like an uncomfortable pedestal with this question, but on this piece about building belonging, I'd love to hear from each of you how you experience belonging, your experience around creating that, and how you think about bringing in stakeholders who are often furthest from power and what that can look like in your experience.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ben. For me, I think what I want to carry away from this and just like what gives me hope, right, is like I said, during this pandemic, Carver's Camp Canoe family stretched outside of ourselves and looked out to community. And we were able to align with Yahoo Indigenous creatives. We were able to reach out and listen to the struggles of the Marshallese Women Association. We were able to have community dialogue and conversations with those of our peers in the Community Learning Fund. And that allowed, that allowed me really as like, if I think about Carver's Camp Canoe family as like a service provider in the case that pandemic ends and we get to take students out, it's like, it really showed me the opportunity and the gift that we have to just focus, even at bare minimum. If I just said the things I shared earlier, is like, what does it look like to do trauma-informed swim? What does it mean to get youth of color out onto the Salish Sea when it's right there on the Tacoma waterfront, right? What does that look like for career opportunities and just transition for them? And what does it mean for them to have a chance in a space to think about their cultural identities and how that shows up in like education itself, like the big education with an E and the institutions that govern those spaces, like universities and public schools. It's like, and where is there room in those community groups, both service providers and institutions, for them to not say that they need to validate these worldviews or these epistemologies, but it's just like the way that my community members view the world is a way in which it's valid in the Graduate Tacoma movement. And I really feel like there's still opportunity for that to be acknowledged within the Foundation for Tacoma students. I think this is like a first step towards a longer movement for that. And so that gives me hope, that like it won't be a mystery what boarding school was and how that shows up in trauma in education systems for American Indians or urban natives and their kin, I know that there's a big school prison to pipeline kind of thing, that we all are aware of. And that's why I think we come to this conference. And I think for us, we need to look at that a little bit on a finer scale for some of those constituents and how that solution, right, exists within our communities. There are people that are already doing that, but what does that look like when we give them the space to do it? And it might be unconventional, but I'm just saying for me, the dollars that came from this Community Learning Fund investment, I really think opened up a space for those community members to continue to do that cultural transmission and that knowledge exchange in a way that's really needed right now.
Well, I can definitely say that I experience belonging throughout this entire process. What Graduate Tacoma did was brought us all together in the same room at the same time. So whether that was virtual or when we had the opportunity to be in person. And I think just that intentionality around putting us all in the same space, putting different organizations together in groups, mine being the Data Capacity Fund, that was a strong sense of belonging. There were folks within organizations who had similar challenges, and we were working towards similar goals and similar outcomes. And that for me definitely felt like a strong sense of camaraderie and belonging. And I was super excited to be able to maintain those relationships outside of that set time. So continuing those conversations and building on those for sure. As far as bringing in stakeholders, I think that's an area for us as an organization to continue to ensure that our students' voice is reflected and that we're sharing the data and the outcomes and what we are seeing as far as our impact and growth within the organization, what we're seeing within community, and we're sharing that with students. And we're allowing space for students to understand, what does this mean? What does this look like? What is the impact of this for a student like you? I think it's so important that as an organization that we continue to push ourselves to not hold all of those cards, but to continue to be transparent. So Peace Community Center does have a community advisory board, and I am excited to be able to bring data to them. I'm excited to be able to share and be transparent with family members and students. And so that we have that pushback and we have, okay, well, if this is the data is telling us, then why aren't you as Peace Community Center, my organization, well, why aren't you responding to this? Or, I can see you guys doing a better job job in making sure that we're on track to do X, Y, and Z. So the accountability that I think can come out of when we are making sure that all voices and really looking at the data and saying whose voice is reflected, whose voice is absent, and being real intentional about seeking those folks out and inviting them to be a part of the conversation.
You know, building upon what Denice and Ashley have talked about, I think as I reflect on this experience with the community learning cohort and the sense of belonging and how do you create it and how do you experience it, I think that, you know, the space that you provided was really important. Like Denice said, the gathering. I think that it could be even maximized more in the sense that, you know, you experience belonging when you feel that you can contribute to the agenda, like you can contribute to the purpose of the group and influence it, and your voice is heard. And when I say, you know it's heard, not just because people are listening, but maybe you see something that you've said reflected in the next meeting or in something. And I think it's, you know that you belong when you're allowed to be vulnerable. So I think about the breakout groups that we had. And, you know, as COVID started to evolve, being in one breakout group in particular, where one of our members just had to furlough a staff member and came back to the group, even though there was a set agenda of what our group was supposed to accomplish, we just took it upon ourselves. We didn't do the assignment. We were able to like be there for each other and just offer that space. And I think that that's something I would like to see extend beyond just the breakout groups to, you know, to have participants really help drive the larger project. I think those of us who work in youth development, we do that with our youth. Student voice is important, and student voice for students and for youth, they don't realize that their voice mattered until they see some progress on something they've said, or they see something implemented that they've shared. And I think it's the same with adults. And then just thinking about, you know, it's kind of, in order to create belonging, you have to allow that space. You have to listen and take the things that are worthwhile and implement them in some way, shape, or form. And then just in terms of bringing stakeholders who are often the furthest from power, is you have to be intentional about developing those relationships. They are not just going to come because you invite them, because they don't know who you are. And so you have to go out, build that relationship, be consistent, and also get to know like why you want them at the table. It shouldn't be you want them at the table because they're this community of color and we need that representation. We all know what that feels like, and we know when that's the case. So I think it's about being more proactive and, you know, instead of more intervention type oriented, like, oh my gosh, they're missing. Let's go out there and invite them, but no one has a relationship with them. So Tacoma is a relational city. Everybody knows everybody, and that could be really good, but it also can be bad. And so, you know, just creating space and having those honest dialogues about it. Let's just be real about it. Yeah. And I think when you talk about stakeholders that are furthest from power, it kind of goes back to the MOU thing. It's like, what is power? Because within their community or their population that they serve, they have power. So, you know, recognizing that every stakeholder has power, and it just may not be at play in the venues that you're in. So, you know, we have to get away from that. Oh, those furthest from power. And so I think that's enough. I think I've said enough.
Thank you. I want to emphasize my gratitude and admiration for the three of you and everyone who is in the CLF cohort. We need you. Tacoma needs you. We need you and all of our partners to help this movement live up to our values and ideals of true community ownership. As the backbone for Graduate Tacoma, we're committed to fostering this from two different ends. On one end, We will continue to provide supports and investments in partners like the three of you so that you can build power in your community and tackle your adaptive challenges. And on the other end, we're committed to working to bend power structures and institutions towards youth and families and to the community. And then there's this middle space where building community power and bending institutions meets, where we as the backbone come together with you, our partners. And I feel lucky to be in this work with you, and I look forward to our work together in the years ahead. So much thanks, and take care.
Thank you. Thank you.